Hi, I'm Margie Coonsey, MDA Governance Manager, and I wanted to share some things to know before you go to the MDA House of Delegates. Let's start by talking about the House itself. The House is your annual membership meeting. It's a place where you, as our members, give us, the MDA board and staff, direction for the future of the MDA. Always keep that in mind, and remember, we need your input. A lot of terms are used at the House, like delegate and alternate delegate, resolutions, caucus meetings, and reference committees. If you're new to all this, you might wonder what that all means. So let's briefly break it down. Let's start by talking about what is a delegate. Each component is given a specific number of delegates, and that's based on the number of members in your component society. That way we have a representation from our entire membership. Along with the 50 component society delegates, there's a delegate each from both of the dental schools. So you've been chosen as a delegate, but what exactly does that mean? Your job is to listen to the resolutions put before the House, give input based on your own ideas and from your component members, and vote. To vote, you just raise your orange vote card when the speaker calls for a vote. But remember, only delegates can vote. For each delegate, there's also an alternate delegate position available. If you've been chosen as an alternate delegate, you may be asking yourself if you even need to attend the meeting. Well, the answer is yes. Alternate delegates will sit in for delegates if needed. Sometimes it's just for a short break, so it's a temporary replacement and you don't need to notify anyone. You just need to be ready to listen and vote if needed. But if one of your delegates can't make it at all for some reason, an alternate delegate has to be moved into that delegate position. Because if you don't have someone there waiting to vote, your component society will lose its vote. Being an alternate is also a good way to learn more about the MDA and how policy is made. It's also a good learning experience if you think you might want to be a delegate in the future. Now let's talk about resolutions. Resolutions are really the most important part of the House process. If you picture a town hall meeting where people stand up and bring up items to consider, there's not much organization. The House of Delegates is a more formal way for members to bring items for consideration to the MDA leaders. A resolution is simply that. It's an item that members want considered, but it's in written form. Let's take a closer look at resolutions. All are presented in the same format. The subject describes the topic of the resolution. Submitted by is just how it sounds, who submitted it. Resolutions can only be submitted by the Board of Trustees, component societies, delegates, House committees, and the MDA President. Financial implication. You'll notice there's two lines for this, author and staff. All resolutions must show the possible financial implication to the association. In other words, is adopting this going to affect the bottom line of the association? And if so, in what way? It's something to think about when you're making your decision. The staff financial implication may be different than the author's. We research and give our best estimate, but sometimes we come up with a different amount. If these amounts are different, feel free to ask why when the resolution is discussed. Referred to shows which reference committee the resolution is assigned to. This will make more sense in a minute when I talk about reference committees, so hold that thought. A resolution must also show how it aligns with the strategic plan and mission of the MDA. We always want to keep that in mind when making decisions for the MDA. A resolution also includes a background statement that describes the reason the resolution is being presented. And then finally we get to the most important part of the resolution itself. This is shown using resolved clauses. This is the meat of the resolution. A resolved clause describes in detail what the author of the resolution is asking you to consider. You will only be voting on this part of the resolution. All the other information is important to introduce the resolution, but this part of the document is what is turned into House policy. It's important that delegates and alternates carefully review each resolution and discuss with their component society prior to the House. You should try to form a general opinion on each resolution, but you're encouraged to come to the meeting with an open mind. After a lot of discussion, the resolution that ends up being moved at the House may be different than what you see in your House notebook. Okay, now let's talk about caucus meetings. This is where you and other members talk about the resolutions. Someone is sure to bring up something you haven't considered, or you may be the one bringing up a different view. This meeting is all about discussion. There are 3 caucuses: Greater St. Louis, Greater Kansas City, and Greater Missouri. Greater St. Louis is, of course, Greater St. Louis members, but it also includes student delegate and alternate from the Missouri School of Dentistry and Oral Health. Likewise, Greater Kansas City Caucus is made up of Greater Kansas City members and the student delegate and alternate from UMKC School of Dentistry. The Greater Missouri Caucus is made up of the members from the remaining component societies, and that includes Central, Greater Springfield, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, and Southwest. The caucuses meet both Friday before the first meeting of the House and again Saturday before the second meeting. Now I really want to stress the importance of reference committees and why they're important, and not just to those who are serving on them. There are 2 reference committees: Articles of Agreement and Bylaws and the General Reference Committee. Each reference committee is assigned resolutions. You can see a list of those in the summary of resolutions in the House notebook. The reference committee's job is to listen to the members give their opinions on the resolutions and then take that information to develop a report giving recommendations on how to vote. That's why we have reference committee hearings right after the first House ends. Now that you have an overview of what all that means, let's talk about the meeting flow. In your House notebook is a schedule of events. The day starts with your caucus meetings, so head there first. That's where you'll find your badge, and that will indicate if you're a delegate or an alternate delegate. If a delegate doesn't show, an alternate delegate is asked to substitute for them. Your component president or executive director will notify the MDA staff prior to the beginning of the House, and that way you're certified as a delegate. After the caucus meeting, head to the location of the House of Delegates' first general session. A seating chart will help you find your seat. The delegates will be seated on the floor in a designated area, so just look for signs that represent your component society. Association officers will sit at the head table, but other board members will sit with their component societies, along with their executive director if they have one. Alternate delegates have a special reserve section directly behind the delegate seating. The first meeting is usually short, and it includes things like introductions, report, referring of resolutions to the reference committees, and the nomination and election of officers. When the first session of the House adjourns, please don't leave. This is when the reference committee hearings that we've talked about take place. It's important that everyone attend those, not just committee members. The committee will take the stage and will ask for testimony on each resolution. Whether you're a delegate, alternate, board member, past president, or a guest, any member can speak for or against a resolution. The committee itself won't talk about the resolutions. They're only there to listen to you. So if you don't say anything, the committee has to rely on its own judgment only, and that's really not how it's supposed to work. The committees meet after the hearings and write a report, and that gives their recommendation to you on how to vote. Here's a sample of how it will look. The recommendations will usually be to adopt or defeat, but the committee can also submit a substitute using everything it's heard. That's called a reference committee substitute, and it will be part of the report. Sometimes the committee feels a resolution should be referred to another group like the Board of Trustees or the Legislative and Regulatory Committee. That will also be part of the report. Now that sounds like a really long day of work, but we do invite you to join us at the Friday evening cocktail reception. You can attend the reception even if you don't plan to stay for the awards banquet, but we would like you to stay for the awards banquet where we recognize outgoing board members and association award winners. It really is a lot of fun, and it gives you time to visit with old friends and make new friends. Members are free of charge and guests are welcome for a small fee. But to help us plan for the event, we ask that you RSVP for both you and your guests. And with that, day 1 is done. So what happens on day 2? Well, Saturday morning starts with a caucus meeting again. You'll review and discuss the reports over a full hot breakfast. You might find that you like a certain resolution but have a suggestion for an amendment. You can amend a resolution during the House of Delegates when the resolution is moved. We do ask, though, if you do plan to move an amendment, that you visit the MDA staff table prior to the House being called to order so that we can have it ready for display when you talk about it. We find that it's much easier for the delegates to have a full understanding of what they're voting on if they can see it. During the second House meeting, the Reference Committee Chair will present the report. As each resolution is moved, only delegates, officers, board members, and past presidents of the association may speak for or against a resolution. This is when you can move any amendments, but remember you need to be one of those people to move an amendment. The staff will bring up the display and you can present it to the House. Once discussion on each resolution is complete, the Speaker will ask all delegates to vote by raising the orange vote cards. And this is how House policy is made. It's by your votes. It's how you help guide your association in its future directives. Remember, your voice and your vote matters. The day will end with the installation of new MDA officers and an address by your incoming MDA president. The House typically adjourns late morning, usually sometime between 10 a.m. and noon. The board meets right after the House to make a game plan for carrying out the House directives. We'll update you through the year on our progress. I really hope this summary has been helpful to prepare you for your experience and alleviate some of the unknowns. If you still have questions about the MDA House, don't hesitate to call me or just shoot me an email. I am happy to talk through it with you. Be on the lookout for your official House notebook. It'll be sent to you by email at least 21 days prior to the House. We won't have copies on site, so make sure you download your copy. I look forward to seeing all of you at the MDA House of Delegates.